For those who are unfamiliar with the Goemon series, I'll do a little bit of explaining on what it is. The whole series revolves around a ninja named Goemon, who is based off Ishikawa Goemon, a legendary Japanese bandit who stole gold and values and gave them to the poor. The first video game based off Ishikawa Goemon was released in 1986 in the arcade, titled Mr. Goemon, and during the same year, they released Goemon Karakuri Dochu for the original Famicom. They started a whole new series of games from Konami, most of which were only released in Japan. As they kept making more games, the Goemon character that they used throughout the games started to become more of a video game character than a character based off the legendary thief of Japanese folklore. Despite the game series' popularity in Japan, only 4 games out of the whole series has actually made the light of day in the US. The first game is Goemon Yukahami Katsuto Imaki, which was the first Goemon game released for the Super Famicom, and that was released in the US as The Legend of the Mystical Ninja, which you can currently download on the Virtual Console. The second one is Goemon Neo Momoyama Bakufu no Odori for the Nintendo 64, which was released in the US as Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, which is the game I'm going to be reviewing today. The third game is Goemon Karafunu Toru no Nazu for the Game Boy, which also used the name Mystical Ninja starring Goemon when it was released in the US the same month as the Nintendo 64 game. Despite both games having the same title, they're both different games altogether. And the last game was Goemon Duroduro Dochu Obaki Tenkomori for the Nintendo 64, which was released in the US as Goemon's Great Adventure. But the game we're reviewing is the second Goemon game released in the US, which is Mystical Ninja starring Goemon for the Nintendo 64. So that's the whole history of the Goemon series. Why this game was one out of 4 of the Goemon games that was released in the US, while there's 1,000 of them released in Japan, is just out of the question for me. But enough going over that. Let's just play Mystical Ninja starring Goemon. The first thing that I gotta mention is that when you first start the game, then you get a file selection screen. You're going to need the Nintendo 64 controller pack in order to play this game. Otherwise, then you cannot save the game. Now, the story to this game is that a peach-shaped spaceship comes flying down to Oedo Town and transforms the Oedo Castle into a European-style castle with squares and flags. It turns out to be shoguns from Peach Mountain who are attempting to turn Japan into a fine arts theater. After seeing what happened, Goemon and Iba sets off on their quest to stop the Peach Mountain shoguns from getting rid of Japan and changing it into a fine arts theater. So you start off in Oedo Town, where you're just looking around talking to people, basically to find out where you're supposed to go. One thing about this game, as well as the other games of the Goemon series, is that it actually takes place in Japan. At least it makes sense to call their land Japan, since everything about this game is in a Japanese environment. The houses look Japanese-like, as well as the characters who work for different jobs in Japanese culture. And of course, there's the Peach Mountain shoguns. So anyway, once you actually leave Oedo Town and start heading to Mount Fuji, then that's when the actual gameplay begins. And it turns out to be an awesome 3D platformer. It uses the basic platforming elements that was used in Super Mario 64. The main character that you play is Goemon, but you can switch with Iba. Those are the 2 characters that you start off with in this game. Later on, you meet up with Yai and Sasuke. All these characters that you play have different weapons on their own. Goemon has the stick and the Rai power, Iba has a hammer, Yai has a sword, and Sasuke has a blade and some firecracker bombs. They get more weapons along the way, but I'm not going to name them all. I like how they use some of the gameplay elements in this game. I know I already mentioned that this game uses the platforming elements of Super Mario 64, but there's more to the game than just that. The dungeon levels are quite similar to the dungeon levels from the Legend of Zelda series. I mean, heck, the map looks the same, that's for sure. Not only that, but there's also an item that you get in the temple that shows the location to where you are, as well as the location to the boss. The boss battles are remotely easy once you figure out how you beat them. It's pretty easy to avoid getting hit by the bosses anyway, as you do to actually strike them. The soundtrack to this game is pretty awesome too, especially during the opening theme, which is a very catchy tune. There are also some parts in the game where the music is just typical Chinese or Japanese music, but then there's also some parts where it starts to get upbeat and awesome. Like the scenes where you're traveling outside to get to the next town or dungeon, and you come across some different enemies to fight. It has a tune that is so freaking catchy that you just want to keep listening to it until you leave the area. But one of my favorite soundtracks throughout the whole game is also one of my favorite parts throughout the whole game, and that is the scene with impact. I mean, it's like the first thing you would notice, there's a light that's shining on Goemon, who's taking him up. And then the next thing you would know, you get these awesome shots, as well as this awesome music. Impact! Oh yeah, just looking at the sequence, then you know it's going to be awesome. Goemon goes inside Impact, getting ready to control him. And once he does that, then it is time to kick some butt. So after the sequence is done, then you are out there destroying trees and cannons. He's actually a bit hard to control at this part because you're often crashing at some of the stuff here. And when there's a hole, then you usually end up falling since the jump button is slightly delayed. Oh well, at least you're only doing this for about a minute. This is just where Impact is approaching the giant robot. After that, then that's when you fight Kashiwagi. Now this is a very awesome giant robot battle. In a way, it kind of reminds me of one of the boss battles from Star Fox. You are armed with your robot punches and your Rai missiles. Once you use the missiles, then it will use some of your Rai power, but you can keep gaining your Rai power by punching any of these items that he throws at you. I honestly don't know what they really are, but I believe it's some kind of Japanese item or something. It takes a little while, but eventually, then I would be able to take down Kashiwagi. So, after that battle, Impact mentions to Goemon that he's going to head down to Hollywood, USA to be in a movie. Wow, Impact doing a movie here in America? Now that's something I'd like to see. Now that I've gone over the big highlight of the game, there's not much else I can say about this game. It's an awesome 3D platformer with some really fun elements. Alright, so, Mystical Ninja starring Goemon. I gave that game an 8.5 out of 10. It's like, yeah, for a game series that was only released in Japan, it's just too bad that there wasn't very many games out of this series that got released in the US. But, even so, Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, if you ever find this game like anywhere, then I would check it out. It's a fun game, I like it, and you know, you should check it out. Alright, so overall, I hope you enjoyed this review of Mystical Ninja starring Goemon.